big crowd here today for a light agenda.
That means 3 of us.
Yeah, that means we'll have a good opportunity to vet whatever we have before. Let's begin this meeting as we do all with a word of prayer. Michelle Phillips, you lead us in a word of prayer.
Sure. Let us pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the many blessings you have given us, Lord. We just ask that you put a hedge of protection over this county, Lord, over this state, and over this nation, God. We just ask that you would lead and guide us and direct us in everything that we say and everything that we do. Lord, it would be pleasing in your sight, Lord. And just be, especially right now with the city of Tuscaloosa and the Tuscaloosa Police Department, they lost one of their own last week, God. And we just pray for peace and comfort for that city and that department and the family, God. And we just lift all these things up to you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. I haven't had any requests to go out of order, so let's just go in on it. Mr. Scales, good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Begin with you.
Yes, sir. On behalf of the Public Works Community Services and Intergovernmental Relations Committee, we have 3 items, and is that Mr. Bennett? You want to present this morning?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Two maintenance-related contracts, one for overhead doors and one for crane inspections, and then one contract to do a health and safety plan for our wastewater treatment plants for $200,000.
What is the health and safety plan? What is that? What is-
The scope is essentially identifying all the hazard areas in the plants, like confined space and electrical hazards, make sure they all get posted and they're all consistent across all 9 plants.
And we're not able to do that. Seems like, how many years the plant's been there?
They've been there for a long time, but as rules change and confined space rules get changed, and we don't fall directly under OSHA, but the main issue is making sure that we have signage at every place. There are dozens of places at each plant. We want to make sure that we're consistent across all of our plants. And we do training for all of our individuals, but we just want to make sure that we're
Any other questions?
This is on number 2.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you asked, the budget?
Yes, it's the same as item number 3. It was $178 million for the original budget, and the current remaining is $16 million.
Okay, so it just shows zeros there.
Yeah, we just omitted those when they put it in the original.
Okay, but it is there. Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Maybe 1, 2, 3.
All right, it has, there's a motion on the floor to move items, all right. Items 1 through 3, it has been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, so we have a few items under our report, District 1 report. The first is an infrastructure grant for the Birmingham Public Library, which, just for informational purposes, this is the old Springville Road Library. And anyone have any questions? All right, the item has been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second. It has been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Is it this is the one, last one you asked just to carry over? To take this out of 19 funds?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the last one. Also wanted to introduce again this morning, for all commissioners, you all may recall this was back in May as it relates to our community grants and combining the line item for infrastructure. And I wanted to make sure that this morning that we discussed that. I brought to the president's attention again, and I'm going to yeah, that's what I'm looking for. To me, what is the hard copy? I don't see it. This is the attorney's.
My problem.
I know, I'm not trying to be a big. Okay, so if you all just bear with me, hold on just a moment. Samika, I'm in. All right, so I wanted to make sure that, thank you. I wanted to make sure that this was the correct, so basically in short, what the issue that my office faced, and I'm not taking away from any of your offices, is that we had several projects that were kicked back from legal, and one of them was YMCA because it didn't meet the infrastructure requirements. We adopted the park in Forestdale, which is Holiday Hills. We paid for the removal of debris and weeds and so forth. We paid for it internally. However, you're now having seniors at this park. When it was originally developed, those folk were back in their 50s. They're now in their late 70s and 80s. And to make a long story short, we tried to get equipment for that, and Cal is aware of that. And then according to what legal shared with us is that that too was not an infrastructure project because of the maintenance of the equipment, or to purchase equipment to maintain the property we couldn't do. So basically what this is an attempt to do, and I was definitely more inclined to discuss this again with the president last night, that I went over to Fire Station in Forestdale, which is in unincorporated Jefferson County. They have no city government. I'm sure all of our districts, that there are areas that have no city government, so they got to depend on us, which is unincorporated Jefferson County. I learned while I was there that there were 9 sets of mattresses that were needed. The fire station itself on 2, which is headed toward Adamsville, but is on 78, needs painting, additional mattresses. They need lockers for the firemen to store their personal items and so forth, and that doesn't meet infrastructure requirements. And so all that I'm trying to do is to stay within my budget. I know how to do that, but we voted for this $225,000, and the restrictions that we have in place, just like Fairfield just closed their library, I can't use infrastructure funds to help them operationally. And so that's what this is all about, is making sure that the money gets to the community. And if you all have any questions, or are there any add-ons, the attorney and John Henry can speak, that this is no new item. I brought this up, and it's so that we can make sure that if there's a need, it will be left to the discretion of the commission. Every item that is done anyway in our districts have to go through a process, and that process, as we all know, is very rigorous, and the county attorney has to sign off on it along with the county manager's office. So it's not anything that's going to benefit us personally. It should be benefiting the community. So is there any questions that any of us have as relates to this resolution? Any offers to this resolution that needs to be brought forth? And Mr. Attorney, if you can share with me some of the projects that I mentioned that came before your office, and that when I did approach you about this sometime back in April of this year, that this is how we came to this resolution.
I don't know that I can speak to specific projects because we get several from all of you, but you have the criteria that the commission voted on with regard to infrastructure money, and as well as your discretionary fund. And so the decision for the commission was that you divide that, that you had your discretionary funds that could be used in accordance with the rules, and then you had your infrastructure money, which required a match of the, at that time, governmental entity. I think you all amended it subsequently to allow nonprofits to participate in infrastructure monies, because the other was that prohibited you from using money for the 501s. So the latest,
And we lowered the
You lowered
Match.
you lowered the match, and you
20%.
also allowed 501s to receive money for parking surfaces and buildings, as I recall it. So the decision is a commission decision as to how you budget and allocate those monies for those purposes. But infrastructure monies are strictly used for the requirements of infrastructure. For 501s, that is building or parking surfaces, and we have specific requirements for the use of infrastructure money. So that's kind of where things stand.
So basically what this resolution does is to say, for example, I know that there have been projects that we all have worked on, that it doesn't preclude any commissioner from doing an infrastructure project if it's an infrastructure need. What I was hoping that we all can work to do is that if there is an item that comes up in your district, that what could take place is that we would not be restricted to not being able to assist if we had funds available. And I will tell you that this, for me, and I give you this as an example in closing, when we gave this $5,000 to the Springville Road Library, truthfully, I wanted it to go to Fairfield, but it didn't meet the infrastructure requirements. In the interim, we tried to go with the YMCA, and then they too didn't meet the infrastructure requirement, and so then we had to look at the library. But here's $5,000 that if it could have at least assisted on some level with the city of Fairfield, I would have preferred to do that. But again, this is what I believe can be resolved. We are the commission, we're the body that makes up the resolutions. And I want us to all be hopefully understanding to each district have unique needs. And I will tell you that I don't think that sometimes we best utilize our dollars when we have to do an infrastructure project that's going to cost a lot of money. And no different than what I said about Holiday Hills and Forestdale, that's unincorporated Jefferson County. In addition to that, just for the equipment alone was like $17,000. And then Tony, you just made me aware to do the restroom there is $104,000. And on the maintenance piece of it, which I don't understand why you would build a park anyway and have a restroom in the park that has no access to toilets or plumbing. That's weird to me. And it's been like that for over 20 years, that you got a shell out there with no usage. And so when I asked the question of legal, well, can we at least help, since that's a smaller amount of money, then that's when we would kick back that no, we couldn't purchase lawn equipment to be able to help the residents, to help them really, to help us. Because the park now belongs to us. It's in the county. But that too is not considered an infrastructure project. So if anybody has any questions, if you don't.
Restrooms wouldn't be considered an infrastructure project?
Well, what happened was we used.
Because you started talking about restrooms and then you went to lawn furniture and stuff. So
No.
I kind of got lost in there.
That's okay. So what I'm saying is, the restroom is considered an infrastructure project, but that's $104,000. I gave 25 initially because I didn't think that it was going to cost that much, because what was going to happen is that the community, through the previous commissioner, had already received $20,000. But it was $20,000 again for an infrastructure project, which is the reason why the money has sat there for years. Am I correct, Mr. Tellis?
They had, I'm not sure the folks in that community, they have a grant of $20,000 they have not spent yet. The building is half built, as you know, and it's been like that for at least a decade.
So that's my point, is that they had $20,000 of county funds, have done nothing with it because it was allocated for the restroom.
But was that a community agreement?
No. No, my understanding, it was an infrastructure grant.
From the previous commissioner?
Correct.
Okay, so.
That was to go toward the restroom, which the restrooms are not ADA compliant right now. They have no They have no plumbing, they have nothing in it other than a shell.
But don't we have some kind of time limit that they have to use that unless there's a application for?
No, in that case, we've been lost all the money that we have allocated because all this money been sitting here for over 8 years on just about all these projects. And now you gotta go back in and get them rebid because all the material stuff done went back. Y'all sit up here and held this stuff up for years. It's the commission, whoever was here before the three of us got here, did it. So it's time for y'all to get down and start doing the work in these districts the way this money was allocated for. People have put it in place, and we tired of it sitting here like this. Brighton and Lipton to the day still don't have a storm shelter, and the money been sitting over there all these years.
All right.
So in short, what I'm saying is that now the plumbing estimate has come in at $104,000. So even with me giving an additional $10,000 of infrastructure dollars, the total was $35,000. Remember, we don't get, but according to the last amount of money, it's $150,000. $35,000 have already gone to this project. I did $40,000 for Fairfield to do the potholes there. We've done some other infrastructure projects. By the time that you put all of these lump sums of money, you're only going to have about maybe 4 to 5 projects that you can actually say that you've done with that money, when you could have at least gotten more accomplished if you could put those 2 line items together, combine the 2, and then you could go ahead and say, hey, we might not can do 40, but let's just do 5 or whatever you can do. But once we get to these large pockets of money, to me, it takes away from other potential projects that could have at least received some kind of funding. And that's what I was sharing with the president, which I don't know where he is right now. He got to be somewhere. I'm sure he's listening. That's why I told him last night, it's a shame when you have firemen don't even have a mattress to sleep on, and these are your first responders. But as much as I'd like to help, I have a track record of being a council member who always took care of police and the fire departments. I'd like to help, but I can only do so much. And I'm finding myself going back into the same problem of where you need to stay within your budget, but I had to force this project to come through just to even get out $5,000. So I think that we're really restricting ourselves. And that's the only reason why I asked up front. Rather than identifying the problem, I wanted us to have a solution. So that's what legal presented to me back in April. We now, effective October 1, which will be next week, start our new budget, which is the reason why I wanted us to go ahead and address this today. Do anyone have any questions?
What's the overall change in the AO from what we have written
Well,
down?
see, this is not, so let me be clear, this is not an administrative order. This is a resolution, and what this resolution does, it combines the infrastructure dollars with the community grant dollars, with the understanding that it is a vote of the commission for the items that are presented, obviously. And then we also have, in terms of with the infrastructure projects, the matching grant of money, that too can be determined by the commission.
Would we have to change the AO instead of just adding a resolution? So we have to address the whole AO?
My
No.
understanding is that what this does is it just gives you a larger amount of discretionary fund dollars.
So Commissioner Preet, the resolution you all passed in June says now therefore be resolved by the county commission that no more than 100,000 of the funds allocated to the community grant program for each commissioner shall be expended on qualifying nonprofit organizations with a suggested minimum grant of $2,500, recognizing that each grant takes a minimum of 8 hours of county personnel time to process. So you would be eliminating the requirement for 100,000, and then it would make the full amount of funds allocated to the community grant program.
So it makes basically all of it not-for-profit basically.
Correct.
Takes out
Well,
the
it takes it
infrastructure.
out
Yeah, I was about to
infrastructure.
say,
You
it's
still
not-
have, your guidelines for providing, but the same guidelines for your community grants would still exist. It would just remove the infrastructure portion of it.
Mr. Tellis, how's that work on your folks as far as the getting it through, getting it approved, getting all the checkoffs done? Is it
It'll
maybe?
still go through the process, just like it
I
goes.
understand that, but my question is, how will that, taking their infrastructure requirement out, will that help or hinder the process on your end? Because I understand it's we have to jump through all the hoops. Does it help or?
Well, you're not matching funds with the local governments. They're participating now. But as far as going through the process, it's still going to go through the same process it's going through now.
I don't mind having the conversation. You wanted us to make a decision today.
Well, let me tell you why I'm revisiting this again today, because this is nothing new. I want to make sure that every commissioner knows that this language, this conversation is nothing new. I actually presented this back in April because I knew back then, and I shared that with the president, that was a problem for at least my district then. If I don't have $50,000 to pay for resurfacing, why would I then just hold $50,000 and not do anything with it because I can't find an infrastructure project that meets the infrastructure requirements? I mean, that's just like what I said about this $5,000. I had started out with $15,000, and literally we had to go on the hunt for, well, what can apply for this infrastructure? And it just so happened that the fire district for Forestdale, again, that does not have a local municipal government, they depend on us. Well, I went to something that they had, and that's where I learned, oh, okay, they have an HVAC unit that needed to be replaced. We then did 10,000 or 9,800 and some change last night, and presented the check to them. But again, here's what I'm saying. I want to be very clear. This is not to increase at all any type of discretionary. So I want to make sure for public consumption that this is being stated correctly. This is not new. I'm just representing what I presented before. I presented the issues with the finance department, more importantly, legal. And all you're dealing with this morning is the infrastructure component of what we spend as a part of our allocation, and to look at the restrictions that we have put in place as a body that inhibits us from being able to do more in our own district. And being that we become effective next week with our budget, again, like I said, for me to witness last night what I did, I told the president, Forestdale is right next door to Graysville. When you're talking about firemen don't have mattresses, I don't think that that's something you wait on. But there's nothing I can do about it. Even once it becomes effective, some of their needs total more than $100,000 last night. And that's just between the two fire stations. Then I'd be back to you all to say, hey, well, Lashunda don't want to stay within a budget. And I'm good. I'm great about staying within a budget. What I'm trying to do is to make it really where it's determined, like every item that we have that come before this body, that you all see it, you know what it is, you have the opportunity to read it, and it's up to you how you vote. But I wouldn't think that if we have needs in our district, that we want to inhibit our own selves from being able to address it if we have funds available.
I agree with you. I just, I'd like to study it more. So I'd just ask that we just carry it over until the next meeting, next committee, so we have an opportunity to kind of really look at comparisons and look at needs further.
So if
just to be a little bit more thorough about it.
So
That's
if you don't mind, not to put you on the spot, but Commissioner, you said that before, back in April. That's why I thought that this wouldn't be an issue, because this.
Did we discuss it?
Oh yeah, we discussed it, and
What
I knew that it wasn't gonna pass, so I just withdrew it. But we talked about it.
But we also
And-
changed.
We addressed those
Yeah.
issues and changed the AO and the resolution on June 20th to include 501c3 organizations. We kept the infrastructure component, but we reduced the amount of match to 10%. And at that time, we thought that that would be sufficient to allow the 501c3s to get their air conditioners, different things of what they needed. And the key part is for them, and it's the pleasure of the commission to have skin in the game, to where it's just not where they have the handout. They feel like they're attempting to help themselves, and we're helping them better themselves. I understand, and I had a very lengthy conversation with Commissioner Scales last night, which I shared with finance and legal this morning, and asked, was there something that we could do? And they said that we would look at it and see, and what I suggest is possibly changing some of the definitions of what would be capital improvement, perhaps not infrastructure, but we could change that to capital improvement, because Commissioner Scales told me that they needed paint, and that wouldn't qualify. They needed
Mattresses, and that
mattresses
doesn't
and
qualify.
things like that that would improve the quality of life, and I think would be a good and sufficient public purpose. I think that she has a very valid point, and from talking with legal and finance this morning, they'd like to address it. Perhaps we could change some of the definitions and broaden that where we would include those things that she needs in particular for her district. And I agree. I think that we need to make a change, and I think that if we allow finance and legal to put their heads together and come up with something next meeting, we can get something done.
We all for that.
Basically, you want to make it to where all of the money is discretionary money.
Right.
501c3.
501c3, which is discretionary money, right? But, so, you think that we should still keep some as infrastructure because you want the municipalities to have skin in the game? That's what they want. But the municipalities, majority of them don't have any money to even match the 5%. If it's
At that
10%,
point, they shouldn't be a
5%.
municipality.
Well, we got to study how they got in that type of shape. Don't forget, this was a 3-county government for years. So how did they get in the shape that they're in to where they are not functional? And see, we're never looking at that. I had to go all the way back to the municipalities that I had. And I found out how they got into shape from the Jefferson County starving them out from doing anything. So you can't hold a person responsible for something that the county brought on them from the very beginning. So, and that's what we are trying to do, trying to make them pay 5 or 10% when they would not be in the condition that they're in now if we had invested money in these areas years ago, which never happened. So you trying to whoop the children twice for the same punishment. So I just don't think that's right. So I understand what she's saying about her infrastructure money. She want to do it all. But see, my district just tore up from the floor.
But not just your.
So,
I've got a very poor community.
You have one poor community, and compared to all of the other ones that you got, that you can ride on the road, and you don't know whether you're on a road or lifting up in the air flying, because the road's so smooth. But you know where you at when you drive through District 2. You need a neck brace once you stop.
Do you think that by removing all the infrastructure money and allowing that to go to discretionary and 501c3, do you think that's going to solve that problem?
No, because
There you
it's
go.
not,
That's
but it would help. But it would help.
It just takes
But
all
it-
the money away from
No,
infrastructure.
no, not necessarily, because I'm still investing in my infrastructure. It's depending on what your needs are. I'm still invest in mine because I know the needs of my district. So I know I gotta have $25,000 to build a library out of a house. That, I know that, I gotta do that, 25 for Lips and 25 for Bright. I know that. So I know what I need, and just like she know what she needs. So I don't need it marked for infrastructure for me to know what to do with my money. So
Okay.
let her, if she, whatever, this resolution, if y'all wanna do that, just let it go ahead on, and if she wanna pass it.
And I wanted to make sure too, just for the record, that it's very clear what I'm asking this morning. This is not putting all the money into discretionary. I mean, you got reporters here, and I want to make sure it's reported accurately. I'm not saying put all the money in discretionary. What I am saying is that we have been allotted $225,000 per district, and you as a commissioner, and to overall be voted on by a commission, by this commission, that you can decide whether you want to invest your infrastructure dollars or your community grant dollars into a given project. That's all that this is. So I want to make sure, because a lot of times, you know, by the time I read this stuff, or either I'm hearing it back through a soundbite, it's, oh, well, she wanted all the money to go into community grant. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have $225,000, and as the needs arise in your district, that you as a commissioner who know what the needs are in your district, that you have the liberty to decide those projects that you think are meaningful to your district, how you invest in those dollars, and then take it from there. And that's what I approach legal about, in terms of why are we restricting ourselves, that if you have a need and you can't feel the need, that's almost like kicking yourself down the road as opposed to just addressing the problem. So I don't want this to go out of here today that I'm talking about all the money goes into discretionary. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, you recall when I talked to you about this in May, you told me that you didn't have a problem with it, and that's why I wanted to make sure that you knew, and everybody knows again, this is not a new resolution. It's the same resolution I presented. I withdrew it because you all had apprehensions about it. We're getting started with a new budget, and this is just so that whatever project that comes up that you believe is a worthwhile investment of tax dollars, that you have the ability to do so. That's it.
And I'm not saying I disagree. All I'm asking for is, you know, until the next meeting so we can talk about it. I mean, you said it was brought up in April. I can't remember what I did last month. So me recalling what resolution you brought up in April is not really fair. And I just want to you know, just go through the process, have an opportunity to talk to legal and finance, and look at the AO, and then put it on the agenda for next time.
So then here's what I'm saying right now, because again, I don't know why we have to delay something that we've already discussed.
Because I'm asking,
And
that's all.
I get it, Commissioner, but let me say this to you. When I left that fire station last night, and I don't think I've ever called you after 9 o'clock at night, am I correct? Okay. I asked the chief last night if I can help get you the funds to be able to put mattresses on these beds and to do some of the things that you've asked. Can you get to my office this week? He said yes. That being the case, imagine a fireman that only has a frame with no mattress, and that's your first responder. Now, if this was new, I can understand that. If legal had not already been previously approached, I can understand that. But this came as a result from what legal and finance had already said that we could do 4 months ago. So all I'm asking is, Mr. County Attorney, can you restate what it is that this document allows us as a commission to do? And then Mr. Henry, if you can talk about why finance believed that this was the way to go in order to resolve the issue. We can do this right now, because I'm being honest with you. If I have firemen, and we all do, we have firemen that don't have mattresses to sleep on, and they have nowhere to store their personal items, I think that says more about us than anything else.
Can we make a deal?
Which is?
Which is, if put this off until next meeting, and I'll do 2,500 out of my not-for-profit, my 501 money, and if you want to match that with your 501 money, we can put it in and have it for, they can go ahead and get it. I just want to make sure that we do this right.
So how about we do this? Let us, if you don't mind, if we can allow the county attorney to address this again, so we can refresh everyone's memory, and for John Henry to elaborate on how we got to this point and why this addresses it. And then we can move to the agenda, and then you can get back with them in between today and tomorrow. We can cut that deal. But I'm telling you, this been over 5 months ago. That's why I don't understand what's happening this morning. This been over 5 months ago. And we didn't move on it then because my understanding it needed to be further elaborated on. And so we don't need to wait.
That's all I'm asking for. Now.
Well, but listen to what I'm saying,
and I'm offering to make you a deal and help out the
but the deal is
just for us to wait another 2 weeks.
Well, it's not just to wait 2 weeks.
Money not right. I got that next year budget.
But I get that. But listen to what I'm saying, Mr. President. What I'm asking is to allow that same fire department, which I'm going to ask the media, please go to the one in Forestdale. It's right there on Highway 78, and it's Chief Goldberg, okay? You tell them to some firemen who don't have mattresses to sleep on.
And I'm willing to help out.
No, you don't have to help, Commissioner. All I'm asking is, this is no new document. This is no new resolution. And what was stated was, for the integrity of it and transparency of this discussion, it was stated during that meeting, let us go back and look at it.
In April.
Listen.
Did you bring it back up?
Okay. Why would I bring it back up?
This is a new document to me.
No, it's not a new document to you. It's a document that has already been distributed. And you said during that meeting that you needed more time. 5 months, I don't know how much more time you need.
You haven't come up with any more information. We haven't had any further
I call it
discussions.
Let's vote on it.
Yeah.
Wait, you gonna still give her that $2,500?
I'm asking, all I'm asking for.
But I'd like for legal.
Let's get the money.
So that's still bad.
So, hold on, Mr. President. A question. Can I still, for the record, if legal and finance could say how we got to this point in terms of why this was the resolution that was brought before us? Can we not do that? Would you like to start, Mr. Attorney?
It is the pleasure of the commission how you choose to allocate those dollars. Presently, you have an amount that is allocated to be used strictly for infrastructure and an amount that is used for community grants. It is the pleasure of the commission to determine if you want to make a decision to change that to allow you to spend those monies as you deem appropriate, whether it's infrastructure or whether it's community grants.
So, Mr. Henry, would you like to add in to how we got to this point?
It's the pleasure of the commission.
Bill Knight spilling off. You got notes?
And I'll let you know that he's probably going to run these commissions. Because he may be the better politician than any of us.
No, Commissioner, as stated by the county attorney, you have a specific amount for community grants or 501c3, and you have also another specific amount for infrastructure projects. How we got to this point, there were a number of projects presented to finance or presented in the process to look at, and those projects did not qualify or did not meet the infrastructure test for us to approve them as infrastructure projects.
And here's what you have my word on, Commissioner. That when we take this vote this morning, and it be on the agenda Thursday, you have my word on record. The first item that you're gonna see is that Forestdale Fire Station.
That's fine.
Okay.
But is that going to, if we don't vote today, is that gonna do something to that fire station?
Yeah, I can't do anything for them. Let me put it this way.
For 2 weeks.
No,
We're just putting it off 2 weeks. That's-
but why are we putting it off for 2 weeks?
Well, I had a motion on, I think, last agenda that there was some absence on this issue, and I pulled that, so it ain't gonna hurt 2 more weeks.
Get this too.
No, I believe that the president is gonna honor what he said, is no new language
Oh,
here.
he said he was gonna vote for it.
And when the
The
president
president said that he would consider it and vote for it in May. And in June, she presented it.
I didn't
and-
present anything in June.
In May.
No.
You presented this resolution and withdrew it. And we addressed that problems that occurred with that and with finance and with legal, and made changes to the AO and the resolution that addressed the problems that you had at that time. And now you have a different set of problems that are coming up, and we're attempting to address that as a commission right now. So that's the issues that
So
we
there's
have.
no new problems on this president. All I'm telling you is that, what you did, hold on, it's not a different request, it's not even a different ask. All it was, Mr. President, is that when you all opted to allow 501c3s to participate, when I went back to legal, went back to finance, what needed to be done for Forestdale still could not be addressed. And if I'm not telling the truth, then legal and finance can share that now, and Cal knows about it, because the maintenance equipment to cut the grass over there still could not be done, because even though they are 501c3, it's not considered an infrastructure project. Am I correct, Cal?
Correct.
All right, and the same would apply to, as it relates to the YMCA most recently, that wanted to try to do something with them. Legal kicked it back. It was not an infrastructure project. So what you did do is that while you may have addressed the 501c3 component, I said at the meeting when you all did this, you're still not addressing it if it doesn't meet the infrastructure requirements. And I've since acted on what we talked about, and I got nowhere. So that's why I'm bringing this back up in its original format, Mr. President.
Right, perhaps.
So I want to be clear, there's no new
understand.
problems. There are existing problems that still have not been addressed.
Okay. This goes back, if we go back to our budget, okay? When we rushed through a budget, we got one that we're not happy with.
What budget you rushed through?
I rushed-
Oh, we must
We
not
didn't
been
rush
here.
through
We weren't
any-
here then. We weren't here when they did that budget.
I believe we were, and I'll refresh everyone. When the budget was proposed, Commissioner Ammons made a motion that we delay it for 2 weeks to look at everything. Commissioner
Jimmy, you know what
Scales,
you need to
Commissioner
really
Scales,
cut
I
it
know
out.
exactly,
You
Commissioner
need to stop it for
Scales,
real.
I said, we've got 2 months at that time to do it. You should know, Mr. President, we have today. That took care of that, so we rushed through that budget, and that's what I'm.
We didn't rush through
That
it,
is-
but
that
even
is-
what
that
you
is-
But
discussed.
either way,
That rush job came after a little bit of stalling
Let me tell you
and,
something.
and
He
delay
is
and
a
not wanting to
trickster for
address each of
words
the issues.
With that
I
Let's
feel
not go
called-
there.
that Republican drawl that y'all use to try to change people's words on everything, and that's what I'm just really not comfortable with. And I don't really want to call it what I want to say in front of this meeting. And you really need to stop that, Jimmy. They don't want to rush through no budget. You got everything. You got the whole hog. All we got was the toenail.
Commissioner, you
And
called
you
it the
still
way
are
you
not
said.
satisfied.
You called it what you said.
So stop
I'm
that.
sure-
Call the
I
question.
call for the question.
What is the question for?
She's got a a resolution that you want to present.
But what, are you asking for the past with your 2,500 attached?
Now, I'm asking to delay, which wouldn't require anything, because this was not on the agenda.
All right, so-
Well,
so
wait a
you
minute, hold on. Are you saying that you want to delay this because this wasn't on the agenda?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I would like to delay it so we can take a further look at it.
Okay.
Maybe it's great, maybe we look at the AO, but
Okay.
have more conversation about it.
The conversation that I had this morning with legal and finance was to try to find out a way to accommodate this.
Okay,
And
so,
is that what I said, John?
Yes, sir.
so what is the
All
way
right,
to
so
accommodate?
what
Mr.
we're doing
President?
now is trying to alter it, find a way to accommodate it. And if we wait till the next meeting, we'll have that opportunity, and I asked them to present us with something that would help alleviate this problem.
So, Mr.
So there we
President, this is what they presented to me. So what you're doing is you're asking the legal department and the finance department to second guess themselves, because this is what they came up with. This is not what I came up with.
But they haven't had our
No,
questions.
no, hold on, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ammons. With all due respect, for the integrity and transparency of this matter, you had questions before, and they were answered. I withdrew it because I did not have the votes.
So that's
Well,
April, May,
hold on,
June,
wait a
July,
minute, it
August.
doesn't matter.
It's 5
But
months
for you
later.
to say that
It's
it
5
has,
months later,
no,
Sean.
right, and it's 5 months later that if you were gonna look at it, you would have already done it. That's what you said, you needed additional
This is
time.
the only other time that you brought it
Okay,
up. in
but why would I
5
have to
months.
bring it up, Commissioner?
I told you, I can't remember what I did
Okay,
last month.
well, that's a shame on you.
So-
You're a young man, I'm younger than you, you're a young man.
I've got.
And all I'm saying
I
to
got the
you.
tongue in my cheek when I say
Okay, hold on,
that.
Mr. President, because I'm not gonna argue
I
with,
still
I'm
like-
not gonna argue with this. I did something at the last meeting that no other commissioners had to do. So in your absence and in Commissioner Tyson's absence, I was told that I needed to give the qualifications of someone to add to this Jefferson County Economic Development Board, something you have never had to do and no other commissioners had to do. And I submitted
I've
to,
given-
hold on.
I've given a resume for
Okay,
everyone.
guess what? And so did I. And I still had to read it, and I read it. I do not want it to go out of this room that A, this is to increase our discretionary, because we're not increasing the overall amount that has been budgeted. Secondly, it is at the discretion of each commissioner based upon the appropriations of the needs that are in their district. If you have a question, we're on the floor now. You have the county attorney. He's already said what the resolution is. You have the finance director, who has also said what the resolution is. This is what they came up with, Mr. President. So are we asking the finance chairman, or the finance director, excuse me, and the county attorney to come up with something different than an item they already brought before us? This is their work, not mine.
I called it the question, let's just vote on it.
I would make a motion that, that we table this item for further review.
Okay, and so, Mr. President, all I can say is that I'm looking to you. I told you it would be nothing new. I've held true to my word. And this is what you and I discussed in May, the problems that I still have to address the needs that are in the community, which you and I and all 5 of us agree is good government.
We still address that in June with the issues that you have. Now,
But we didn't address it though,
I didn't
Mr.
know
President.
about these issues that you had. And when you made them available and told me that last night, the
Mr.
first thing I
President.
did the first thing I did walking down the hall is to get John Henry and it was Sean and said, let's try to find out a way to accommodate Commissioner Scales. And that's where I'm standing on it. And if they can find a way to do it, that's great. But I do not want to circumvent an AO with a resolution.
So then, let me ask you this, Mr. President, with all due respect. The issue concerning Forestdale, is that a new issue to you?
I stand by my word,
Hold
$2,500
Hold
out.
on, Mr. Commissioner. I'm asking the President a question. We all are adults here. I'm talking to him.
I also made a motion.
Okay.
And
That's no new ask.
Forestdale
Mhm.
has had issues for many years now. And I understand that. But we have fixed amount of dollars. And it's important that we follow the proper procedure and don't change the rules of the game to fit a particular circumstance what we have. Let's just live within the rules. Let's live within this AO. And then if we need to have it altered or changed, let's come back, present it, and change the AO, and let's all live on
So,
the same.
Mr. President, let me
Rules
just.
wasn't set up for the needy, it was set up for the greedy.
So,
So
Mr.
you need to
President-
bring it down to where you can help people that really need something.
So I'll tell you what, Mr. President. You changing what you said to me. Because this is nothing new. The issues that I've raised are not anything new, Mr. President.
I
You
did
know
not,
that.
what I've
Okay.
changed, what has changed
Okay.
is not what I said, but the
Okay.
circumstances.
No,
revolving around.
Mr. President, because Farsdale is unincorporated Jefferson County. We're always talking about how these cities need to dissolve and come into the county. Yet when they're in the county, we struggle to meet their needs. And hold on, Mr. President, Farsdale is nothing new, and they are a 501(c)(3). Tony Patelis has gone out there to this park, okay? And our ability to be able to facilitate providing maintenance equipment for this park, for seniors to maintain a park that belongs to us, that we're not willing ourselves, Mr. President, to take care of. And it didn't meet the infrastructure requirement. So what you attempted to do, as you say, still did not address the issue, Mr. President. But here's what I'm going to do. You said that you want to wait till the next meeting. I'll wait till the next meeting. But when I put this back up and you said that you haven't read it and you don't make good on what you said, Mr. President, you just prayed this morning so the good Lord hear you. All I'm going to say to you is that you try telling me to squander every piece of dollar I have, and then you come back and say, but you need to live within what you have. Not only does the fire departments need our help, I've since had some requests made from Fairfield as relates to even they need deputies out there with their police department. So that being the case,
But
I'm gonna withdraw the
I
item.
weigh scales.
Yes, ma'am.
Wait a minute now. You couldn't get that $2,500.
No.
We gonna
Oh, 25
wait,
left.
Wait, no, it ain't left. Now, just hold up. He's gonna get.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
Happy to do that.
Scales.
So are you seconding his motion?
He did. He gonna. I want to make sure that $2,500 on the table.
Are you
Well,
seconding his
but hold on,
motion?
but hold on.
Yes,
But before we even do that,
I know.
but hold on.
She
But
gonna
but still, let me make it very clear. The ask will still be the same, which is for us to combine those two line items so that, Mr. President, that we can better meet our community needs, and especially for those unincorporated Jefferson County areas. You want to put 5% back in there? I don't have an issue with it. But what I'm asking primarily is that if we have issues in our district and we have funds available, and if you have it where there's only infrastructure dollars that are left, do you deny the request based upon it not meeting the infrastructure needs? So I want to make sure, bear with me, Commissioner, I'm not just interested in $2,500. What I'm interested in is us doing business like it should be, which is good government, and it shouldn't be,
I agree.
Mr.
And
It shouldn't be.
vendors about
No. Ammons,
That's it.
let Ammons,
Good to meet you.
no, the pleasure's mine.
Let's
But hold on.
Let's move this.
No, I just said I'm gonna withdraw it because I'm holding you to your
But you
word,
lose
Mr.
the
President.
2,500
You
and you
told me,
withdraw
Mr.
it.
President, if I did not change this, Mr. President, you said you didn't have a problem with, you had a problem with it in the previous budget, but you said, listen, I don't care if it's May or June. If you are a person of integrity, your word is your word, Mr. President. And then I'm looking for you, I'm the pro tem, you the president. I'm looking for you to hold fast to your word. My word was that I would never change not one iota in this resolution. You said in the upcoming budget that you didn't have a problem with this. Okay? And all I'm telling you, for the media's sake, there are no new problems. The only new problem I told you about is what happened over there at Forestdale. So I'm going to withdraw it, Mr. President, and I'm going to look forward to you and I working on this together in the original ask.
With the legal.
Well, no, and I've always worked with legal. And like I said, if legal didn't say that we can ask legal now, did they not draw up this resolution? I didn't come up with it. I'm not a lawyer. This is their resolution that came out of their office.
scale.
So I'm gonna withdraw it.
But that just proves that's why the other municipalities don't want to come into the county, because of this, what we just got through talking about,
Okay.
for 1 whole hour, not getting service.
Okay, so I'm gonna withdraw the item, and I'm gonna look forward to coming back with this same resolution with not an ink changed, and then we're gonna address it and dispense it at that time. Is that fair, Mr. President? All right, so the last item that I have is I asked for a stadium update because I believe that the commission should be made aware. I have no clue other than what has been told by calls and things that I've read as relates to where we are with the stadium. And so I'd like to ask if a representative from BJCC as well as the Design Review Committee, if both parties can come before us so that we can know what is going on. I'm hearing differences as relates to the amount of seats. I'm hearing about the flooding. I'm interested in knowing just the truth. So
Now, you asked.
Yes,
but
yes.
You asked for an update from the BJCC. And Tad Snyder is here.
Okay.
Representing the BJCC and with the presentation. Now, you
Okay.
did not mention anything from any other agency.
Okay, but Mr. President,
Your pleasure.
wait a minute.
Mr. President,
Hold
can I
on.
ask that we get on with business?
No,
and then
no,
do
no, 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 that
presentations
is,
after the fact?
Mr.
So we can focus on the business first and
Okay,
then
this
do the
is
update?
business. This is $30 million worth of
I'm just
business.
talking about so we can move on.
Okay,
with
but
the
listen,
update.
Commissioner,
I'm just asking.
Miss Commissioner,
Ammons.
I have never, you want to be facetious. And what I'm saying to
We have
you.
to have a look. We
No,
have to- it has
no,
to be a
and what
little
I'm trying to
lighter.
say to you, Commissioner, be courteous. Be courteous. There's never been one time that if you asked to move the agenda forward, or if you wanted to add something to your agenda, I have never objected. I'm saying be courteous. And with that having said, Mr. President, what I asked for, which I didn't even talk to you, so you can't say who can't say what, because I asked for this. And I'm asking on behalf of this commission in terms of we need to be brought up to speed. And I want to have a balanced perspective. And since you said that, Mr. Snyder is no new friend of mine. He is fully aware that I said I was going to have the Design Review Committee here today. Okay? So I asked because he needed to be able to say what is going on from the BJCC perspective, and I wanted him to have that courtesy. The same applies to with the Design Review Committee. If there are things that are being brought before our attention individually, then I believe that Mr. Snyder should have the opportunity to say yay or nay to what is being said from their perspective. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, now what you've asked for is to update the commission. Okay. I believe that Mr. Snyder is going to present the same thing that he did to the BJCC board, which the news meeting, and everyone was there. It was a public meeting.
Yes, sir.
So are you going to make any changes? additions?
No, I'd like for him, Mr. President, I wasn't,
Okay,
see, you
that's
can't
gonna be-
take over, but
it's
you
gonna be
can't
the
take
same
over
So
my
they're gonna
report.
do the same thing, and I believe that
It's like
many
you're
of the
trying to
design-
take over that part, you can't,
many of
don't
the
do that,
design
Jimmy,
review
please.
team were there also.
Okay, well, that's
So
fine.
what we're doing, we're changing the venue and repeating
So,
that
Mr.
meeting.
so, Mr.
with
Pre-
that
so-
being said, we can go ahead.
Okay, please, thank you. Mr. Snyder, thank you. Thank you for coming. Yes, please, by all means.
So on the, whatever drives all that, there's the presentation that was presented to the BJCC board last Wednesday. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Tad Snyder. I'm the executive director for the BJCC. And we're going to move through this same presentation that we shared last week. Much of the same material has been in front of the design review committee twice, was voted on and approved both times. Mr. Malk that is here as a representative of the design review committee, but he's not the chair of the design review committee, and he certainly doesn't represent all the members of the design review committee.
Okay.
So just with that shared, this is not the right presentation, if that's okay.
Okay. We got that one today too. No, it's awesome. He said he'd give it to you.
And then to advance through the deck is their way to.
And Mr. Snyder, if you don't mind, if you could speak up, I hear in the background that people want to hear you, so.
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't mind to do so.
So while we just work through these technical issues, the first slide you're going to see, which again we shared last week, when this project began, when the partners that are involved in all this, which Jefferson County is one of them, of course, the City of Birmingham, the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center Authority, UAB, assistance from the Jefferson County Legislative Delegation on a car rental tax, and then some private sector contributions that make up around $40 million of the project funding. It's important to recognize that. All those partners came together last summer. The funding was secured for what is now Protective Stadium and the renovation of Legacy Arena. These are two bookend projects that are equally important to the community and what they represent in terms of venues, additional high-profile events in our community that lead to bringing people in from out of town, generate economic impact from tourism, and also raise the visibility profile of the city. But when that funding was secured back last year, by the time we moved towards getting all the design team engaged, it was around December of last year. Populous, which is a stadia and entertainment architect based in Kansas City. They're one of the top two or three in the world. They have designed dozens and dozens and dozens of stadiums and arenas and convention centers around the country. They are the lead architect. We presented them with a set of goals specific to the stadium. We needed a capacity of around 45,000 that was based on interviews and discussions with all the potential users of the building. We had a budget. There's a fixed amount of money for this project. The goal is to deliver it for $175 billion. And we're going to see in a minute another slide that while that's achievable, that is something that requires some discipline in how we go about this project. It needed to be multi-purpose. This isn't just a football stadium. It's one of its primary uses. It's not just a football stadium. It has to accommodate other sporting events that use the surface of the field. It has to support concerts and family entertainment, and it has to be usable day in, day out as meeting space to support the activities of the BJCC. We wanted it to be identifiable as Birmingham, something that was architecturally relevant to the city of Birmingham and the area that's around. And it needed to accommodate a variety of seating types. And that's important because the way consumers experience sports and entertainment today is different than it was 20 years ago, different than it was 40 years ago, when such as what was the BJCC Coliseum was built. People want seating options. I want anywhere from perhaps standing in a club space, a common area around a drink rail. I want to sit in a seat on the 50-yard line. I want to mill around the concourse. I don't even want to watch the game, similar to what you experience at Regents Field if you see a baseball game. You may mill around the concourse. Of course you care who wins. You're there to see the baseball game, but you also want to associate with your friends and family while you're attending an event. That was very important. Populous led us through an exercise where they looked at a series of projects they had done recently, starting with, and one of the example projects when we first started this around the stadium was venues that have been done around the country that are around the same capacity, that had things we liked about it. Colorado State was one. That was a $240 million project 7 years ago. McLean Stadium, that's Baylor. Kyle Field, which is Texas A&M. The metric that's important here is to look at, by the time these projects were executed, what was the cost per seat? Colorado State was $6,600 per seat. Baylor was $6,400 per seat. Texas A&M was $4,700 per seat. This is Minnesota. There's one more at the bottom, which is the important one. For the capacity, the program, and what we're trying to deliver here, which we found a way to do this. That's the important news here. It's something we're all going to be proud of as a community. We're going to do this for under $4,000, $3,800 a seat. So we're doing it creatively. We're meeting all the program needs, and we're delivering this with the amount of money that we have to execute a project that's going to benefit this community for a long time. Where we stand today, and these are the images that have been in front of the BJCC board, have been in front of all the different user groups, have been in front of the design review committee, and you'll see the stadium. This is to orient you. This is to the southwest, so the Westin Hotel, Uptown District is all down here on the south, existing BJCC, Top Golf over here on the right, Greater Birmingham Ministries is to the north, the old former Social Security building, and then you get into the community of Druid Hills going to the north. So you see kind of a primary entrance down here on the south end. There are entrances on the northeast and northwest. Seating bowl, like most stadiums you see, most of the service areas are oriented towards the south here. So you have locker rooms, you have medical facilities, you have office for the coaches, you have support facilities for preparing food, loading docks for visiting and home teams, television production over in this area, all the different support areas you need here. Because on this site, and this is important to remember as we talk about this, if I'm on this southeast corner and I walk to this northwest corner, there's a grade change of 72 feet. So think about an average building per floor if you want to give it 10 feet per floor, 12 feet per floor. 6 or 7 story building difference between this corner of this site and this corner of this site. We're going to see in a minute that drives a lot of the decision making about how all this lays out. Here's a view from the northeast. Again, Topgolf, Greater Birmingham Ministries, existing BJCC, Westin Hotel, excuse me, let me touch the screen, and the rest of downtown. You'll see a lot of thought's been given by the design team, architectural and landscape architecture, about how this site, if there's not an event in the stadium, in the field, is something that benefits the area day in, day out. So this is a large plaza area. There's a later image that shows it was the request of both the Druid Hills neighborhood and the Norwood neighborhood that they would like to see areas that they can use to gather as semi-parkish type spaces if there's not something going in the stadium. This whole corner was designed with that kind of nod, as well as this area here, which is kind of a grassy berm. You can move to the next image. And this image, better than anything, shows you kind of what I'm speaking of. So this darker band here on the bottom is the grade. Shows you the grade change from the south side of the stadium to the north side of the stadium. You'll see on this south side, all this structure for whether it's the scoreboard, you can go back for a second. For the scoreboards, for the locker rooms, for the officiating areas, for the areas that support the operations of the stadium, they're all built down here on the south end because it's the economical way to do it and have it operationally be laid out the way it needs to be. If you try to put these elements on the sidelines or on the north end, you're going to have to excavate all of that dirt out, build retaining walls, add cost, just to be able to take what's here on the south and move it to either side of the north. On this end of the stadium, I'm interacting with everything kind of being up and above me, and I see the scoreboard structure, and I see the stands, and I see all the things that a stadium represents. But if I'm on the north side, which is the neighborhood side, I'm kind of looking down into this seating bowl, and I'm looking down into the stadium. So it's less impactful about, as you move up north of 12th to 13th and get up into the residential areas, I'm not dealing with all this. I'm looking down into the stadium. You can go to the next slide. And this shows that northeast view. So again, I'm the top office over in this area. You can see I have this plaza area, a lot of, and we'll move through this slide later because I know, I want to keep you respectful of your schedule. A lot of thought given to landscaping and lighting around the stadium, so if there's nothing going on in the stadium on a given day, or evening especially, it's well lit, it feels safe. I, as a pedestrian or a resident of the area, feel comfortable walking through this space, that it's not a big dark 4-block area. Everything in and around the stadium is very well thought out in terms of how it appears aesthetically, in terms of safety and perceived. How you feel in terms of lighting around the stadium. Can you go to the next slide? And then kind of what I was saying here on the south end. This now, everything is up above me. I'm entering here, primary ticketing windows and gate entries here. There's an area here we'll show later. This is a fan deck area that opens up the seating bowl to views of downtown, the scoreboard structure, and then of course the east and west sides of the stadium. Just move past that. This does show you from the northwest side of the stadium. This is one of the gates, the two to the north. To show you again on the south side of the picture we looked at before, everything's kind of up above you. As I'm entering from the northwest in this case, and now I'm walking down into the stadium. This is the structure that contains the press box, officiating area, coaches, home and visiting are on the upper section. There is a club area here along the bottom that is roughly concourse level. And then in between those two are the areas where there are 34 suites that were all purchased that make up part of that $40 million in project funding that helped secure the money for the stadium. Just move past that picture. I talked about landscaping. If we move past something that raises a question, please stop me. I want to be respectful of your time. But this shows you the amount of, again, because I think in and around the entire BJCC area, how you feel at street level as a pedestrian or someone experiencing BJCC is very important. This is the amount of thought that was given to how the site lighting is laid out. So all of this feels very safe, very walkable, very much a part of the overall BJCC experience when there's nothing going on within the stadium inside the playing field. There'll be activity in this club space. There's one on the south and one on the west. We hope 200, 225 days a year, similar to the way Regents Field is rented almost every day, even when there's not a baseball game. But we don't want all these areas to feel dark. We don't want just a couple of areas lit up. Everything needs to feel vibrant every day. Let's go back up here just a second. But this shows what I was speaking about. Again, once you can't really see it, but this all shows in a hatched area. This is all at grade. So we're going to talk a little bit about how important dealing with the site grading is. Everything that supports the bulk of the operations of the stadium, whether it's again locker rooms, whether it's kitchen, whether it's a skating area, whether it's interview areas, it could be the areas used for recruiting. All of this is loaded on the south end of the stadium because if you move north of here, you're having to go take all that dirt off the site, which costs a lot of money. But in terms of how the overall seating lays out, which is one of the big questions, you have a lower seating bowl, which is represented by this line. It is just over between 30 and 31,000 in capacity. It goes along the east side, the west side, and to a lesser degree on each end zone. This represents the concourse level, this dark line, right here, right here. So you can move around this stadium at the concourse with the exception of one or two small areas with an unobstructed view as you move around, whether I'm going to the restroom, whether I'm going to grab a cocktail or a soda, whatever it is. I just want to hang out and talk. I don't want to sit in my seat for the first quarter. You can move all the way around the concourse of the stadium with unimpeded views. You have a club level here. You have two suite levels here. This right there, and then this is where the working press is. These do not sit down in the seating bowl. They do not remove seats in this lower level. They are roughly equivalent to the bottom part of the upper deck and the middle of the upper deck that's on the east side. So that's one thing that I know there's been some questions about, but these do not represent seats that take away seats down in the seating bowl. So the way the seating lays out, on this west side, you have 13,937 seats that are on this side building, on this dotted line. There are roughly 9,000 in here. These 34 suites represent 537 seats in the entire stadium. Of that 14, right at 14,000. So on this side, which is the west side, which, and the athletic director for UAB has expressed this very nicely, that in college football, for the bulk of the users, there's not a home side and a visiting side. You have a home stadium. You go experience football at most stadiums around the country. If you go to Tuscaloosa, if you go to Auburn, you sit anywhere. The visitors are assigned by the VC, so in this case UAB. The visiting section may be here. It may be here. This is not the visitor section. But on the east side in the lower bowl, you've got 10,139 seats. So essentially 14,000, essentially 10,100. There is an upper deck that is on the east side that holds just over 9,000. But it is, give or take, based on estimating and the way the architect and the contractor or the program manager, which would be a Harvard for us, have looked at it. To put this deck on this side is about a $17.5 million add to the project.
Why?
Primarily has to do with the fact that the press tower has to be on the west side. Has to be. By the time you try to move that seating around that structure, no longer is it something you can do with steel and aluminum. It becomes cast in place concrete. It's a cantilevered structure. It becomes much more complex structurally. To keep your sight lines, all this has to move back to the right, which pushes it up more against 22nd Street. It picks that building up, which takes it into what's called a high-rise condition, which means you have to treat it completely different code-wise. And the foundation system becomes a lot more complex. All of that rolls up into a minimum number of this, right around somewhere between $16.5, $17 million. And that's without even kind of taking it through code review and plan review of the city and all the things nobody thought of.
So, Mr. Snyder, before you go any further,
Yes.
which I'm going to give you the courtesy and wait to the end, but I did have a question based upon what you presented in this particular diagram. You're saying that and the drawings, well, first of all, is this the final design for this stadium that we're looking at?
There's some small things that'll still move around as we get to construction drawings, but in terms of the big chunks of it, like the seating layout, nothing's final until it goes to bid with construction drawings, but this is essentially final.
So let me ask this question. If you have the Magic City Classic, and that is coming up, according to what you're saying, I'm assuming Mr. Ingram from UAB, is that who we're referring to? Mark Ingram?
One of the users, yes.
Okay. So you're saying that there are no home sides, and typically that's what you experience at a game. You have the home side, and then you have the visiting side, and in this instance, that would be the case. Has Magic City Classic even been considered as a part of this scenario? Of course, I asked this when I was across the street, but I'm going to re-ask you now that we're further into this project. Not only because of the seating, but the outline of the seating arrangement that you're presenting before us today.
It absolutely has. And there's a couple of ways you could potentially address that, but ultimately it's going to be down to, the Classic to decide how they want to. In the way the stadium's rented to any user, whether it's UAB, whether it's ESPN for the bowl game, whether it's the Classic. Ultimately, it's what we call the promoter or the leasee of the building. It's going to decide how they want to handle the seat allocations. BJCC doesn't do that. But the two scenarios that were talked about when we had our programming meeting was you either do the same kind of thing and in alternating years, or you just divide north-south and you have an equivalent setup north and south.
So here's what I'm asking. Have the presidents of the schools been contacted as relates to this seating arrangement, the venue capacity? Have the schools been contacted about this? Because ultimately, that's who signs Gene Hallman's contract. Have they been contacted?
We've had conversations. I've been introduced to both of them. We have not sat down and gone through these plans yet, but the response then was, we want to do that, and we'll.
The response was from the presidents that they want to do this?
Last year, after Classic, I was introduced to both, and there'll be a desire to want to sit down and look at this, but it hasn't been done yet.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking is because I spoke to both presidents at last year's game, and they did not want to go to this stadium due to the lack of seating capacity. That's why I'm trying to see if we have, when I look at this structure, and maybe I'm looking at it with a green eye, it looks like you have less seating here and more seating on the other side. Am I looking at that incorrectly? The blue representing where the press boxes are there less seats there?
Total cumulative, if you do upper and lower deck, there is more seating on the east side than the west side. That's correct.
And so that...
Which is roughly the same condition Legion Field had for all the years the upper deck was at Legion Field. The upper deck at Legion Field was on the east side as well.
Let me let you finish then.
Yes, ma'am.
I have more to say about that, but I'm gonna let you finish your presentation.
This shows you roughly what that west side club space looks like, which goes roughly end zone to end zone. Again, it's important that this space is usable on days that there's not a stadium event. So this represents the opportunity to rent space, equivalent to the other space we rent in the BJCC, equivalent to the way Region Field operates, 225 days a year probably. You can keep scrolling. Get just some more views that look out into the stadium area. And then an end zone club space too that looks out onto the playing field. It's a ground level, which is another trend that designers and teams are seeing, whether it's NFL or college. These field level club spaces are an area where lots of spaces and stadiums are being reconfigured to again provide another amenity, another opportunity for people to consume the way they want to, but not have to be out in the seating bowl the entire time.
They did that now at Legion Field with those tents, right?
Yes,
That
yes, sir. Yes, sir. But this would be permanent condition, restrooms all the time, food and beverage that's there, and it doesn't have to be set up this year. But this is a very important slide, and there's some graphics later. But again, we're working with a 4-block area that has what's called a cross slope from this corner to this corner. What's allowing us to build this stadium for under $4,000 a seat, where you saw some of the comparator stadiums, is we're working with the grades that are on the site. We're spending the least amount of money we can hauling dirt off, which I didn't know before we started this project. This is a ridiculously expensive proposition. You have to take dirt away, to bring dirt back, to balance everything. The seating bowl is being done largely what's called slab on grade, so you're not having to build structure. It saves money. It sets that concourse level with the maximum amount of haul off and fill dirt. So everything you see here, and the bulk of this bowl is all done what's called slab on grade construction. Significantly less expensive than cast in place concrete or precast concrete to do that type of bowl. That's how we can do this for $3,800 a seat. The site opens up as you get to this area. That's why you see the support structure down here on the south side. But you can't understate enough, or you can't state strongly enough how important working with this site is to keep this cost, to be able to deliver this stadium on the amount of the budget and the money we have. This just illustrates that, what I just shared, how important it is to be able to work with the amount of dirt that's on the site today. And then there was one last question, or the kind of conversation's been about the sun and how it's going to impact those that attend events in the building. If you can go to the next slide. So with today's technology, they can do what are called sun studies, or model where the sun's going to be in the sky in certain areas, at certain dates, certain times of the year. So during September, you'll see the sun in the stadium until you get to 4 o'clock, a little bit at 3, 11, 12, 1, 2, a little bit at 3, some more at 4. Everybody's in the sun. We're outside. Everybody is going to be impacted by the sun that's in the sky. Equally, no matter where you sit in the stadium, until you get to later in the afternoon, you get towards 6 o'clock, and there's a big chunk of the stadium that's in the shade. But just to show you, we move to the next slide. It looks, we skip October, we go to November, because again, the seasons change, so the conditions are different. But the amount of sun that impacts the seating bowl, again, until you get later in the afternoon, you're outside your football game. Everybody's in the sun.
That taking into consideration the daylight savings time, the
Yes.
regular time?
Yes. People are a lot smarter than me at this. The other thing is just a short minute on is about orientation. Why is the stadium oriented the way it is? This is NCAA and NFL stadiums. What you see here is north, south, east, west. SEC, ACC. It's important when the stadiums are constructed, with very few exceptions. The ideal orientation is either north-south or slightly to the west of north-south. That's where you want to be, so as the sun passes through the sky, it doesn't impact the play on the field. That's what drives that decision. So that's our orientation. It's roughly north-south. It's just slightly west of north-south. But that's why the stadium is oriented north-south and not east-west. And it won't fit on 4 blocks if you turn it east-west. And then that's, again, the image we started with.
Couple questions.
Yes, sir.
Early on in the marketing, I heard 45,000 expandable to 55, but I hadn't seen anything about a 55. Is that off the table, or is that?
Move back for a second. So the ways that the stadium is going to be able to be expanded to 55 from the very beginning were to take these areas where you have lack of seating and put in additional seating in those areas. So that is still available. We talked about some last Wednesday when it was presented. The architects, they haven't done design drawings and haven't gone through all the structural analysis to understand foundations, but they have done enough of a site study to understand you can add seating on both sides at some point in the future if we need to grow the capacity of the stadium above the 55,000. It can happen on both the east and west side. But that's a whole nother involved study later on, but the space is there.
So they like we bring 10,000 chairs out and set them out. we got 55, okay. Second thing is, I'm sure everybody's, parking.
Hey, look, scroll down. So we've got some slides on this. So we're using a firm here in town called, Sane is the name of the firm, and they're doing our parking study and traffic management plan. Let's just keep going. So it started with, again, here's our stadium. Here are our, whether it's half mile, mile and a half, kind of walk to the stadium area. So 5, 10, 15 minutes is kind of the ball. So here's the next slide. So our available inventory in downtown, whether it's BJCC owned, which is just 4,400 spaces around, that doesn't include the Babel deck, which we use regularly. It doesn't include the former Social Security building, which is almost 3,000 spaces that we use regularly. But just BJCC owned. But in the area, within this 15-minute walk, 16,553 parking spaces. Projecting a Saturday use day, 93% of those spaces being available, or a weeknight, around 91% of being available. All that inventory that's outside of BJCC won't empty out in the evenings or weekends, but a lot of it is available. That gets us to this number of either 15,126 or 15,460 spaces available in the north part of downtown. You go to the next slide. So the ratio that those that plan for parking for these type of events are, it's around 3 people per vehicle, and that's changing pretty dramatically the way people use ride share and some other services now, but around 3 people per vehicle, 94% arriving in a vehicle, even though there's 4% at ride share, that number will grow. Our need is somewhere around 9,000 spaces for a football game, or if there's other events going on at PJCC, that number grows to about 13,500, which you'll see are both below the number that we have available inventory. And there's got to be a big education campaign about how you access that parking, where it is, how can you pre-buy that parking, how can I have a reserved space. There's a lot of planning to do about how you leverage and access and educate the consumer how to use those spaces, but the spaces are there. And there's 2 different parking things that the BJCC authorities and itself about some additional surface lots that we may develop as well that will add to some inventory. So this is the approach we're taking now. Again, there's still work to do to completely flesh out that plan. That's the data we collected so far.
So the reason why I asked Tad, let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Football game largest or capacity that we can do is 13,500. Is that correct? I said football activity or your largest activity, your greatest capacity to be able to park is 13,500. Is that correct? The bottom number on the end?
Yes.
I'm saying your greatest amount that you can park is 13,500,
Well, that's the projected
right?
demand, not the greatest, not the capacity. The projected demand based on 3 occupants per vehicle is this, and other events occurring at the BJCC. If it's just a 30,000 capacity football game, we project that out through per vehicle is 9,000. Assuming that's not the only thing going on, or there's more than 30,000 people attending, that number grows at a factor of 3. So this number just represents an estimated, let's say there's a concert hall event or an exhibit hall event, and there's a football game. That's the anticipated demand. That's not the capacity.
So here's my question, and then it's the design review committee representatives, you can come on because I know we need to move the agenda. So that's why I was asking again about the Magic City Classic, because you went to the game, the outside parking exceeds more than 13,500 cars that can park there. The amount of attendees exceeds more than the amount of seats available. And so I'm trying to figure out why would we not make sure that the Magic City Classic had a voice in it. I'm not talking about Mr. Hallman. I'm talking about the presidents, because I don't see how in the world do you have a game that already, in terms of attendance, exceeds the amount of seats available, and your parking is not conducive to the tailgating portion of the game. I'm trying to get, why did we not include the voices of those officials, knowing that they generate more than $22 million to this area? Just that one game alone.
So if I could answer your question this way, so respectfully,
Sure.
for me, the way I'm going to explain it, tailgating and parking are two different things. So you have to park everybody. How you go about planning for tailgating is a whole nother conversation. And we're looking about, you know, outside of where the parking spaces are, where you create opportunities, whether it's leveraging the City Walk project that's underway, whether it's taking other areas of the BJCC now that those streets will be closed off during a game day because we're not going to allow cars to circulate inside the BJCC perimeter, and you create that game day tailgating experience. That's a completely different presentation model about how you handle tailgating.
So
But just like we do with the Magic City Classic now, all those people don't park at Legion Field. We shuttle people from the BJCC today to the Classic games. Crossplex shuttles people to the Legion Field for the Classic games. UAB on their games is going to bus the students over rather than have them park on site. We would arrange the same kind of thing for the Classic. We would have on-site tailgating, parking, and then we would have these sites where we shuttle in from, just like the game does now.
So here's what I'm saying, and especially being that in my other life, you and I do the same. So here's what I'm saying. If you've ever attended the Magic City Classic, and I would encourage all commissioners to do so, the Magic City Classic in terms of parking has always been in the adjacent community. Surrounding the stadium has always been the tailgating portion of it, by which the city of Birmingham currently now gets the money for the parking. The reason why I'm asking is because it's already congested in this area now around the BJCC. So I'm asking, so where's your tailgating going to be? It's not like the Classic doesn't pay for itself. And why was it not a greater consideration being placed on that game that generates so much money? See, I wouldn't care if it was UAB. It doesn't matter who the vendor is, it's the respect for the money that they bring to the table. And so for us to, I've been hearing some shuttle conversation that, hey, keep the tailgate at Legion Field, and then they can play the game over at the new stadium. And I'm just telling you, logistically, I don't even see how it could work. But why would we even have that on the table when the stadium portion of it should have already addressed this game, being that it's the largest game that is played? If you took all of UAB games together, it wouldn't equal one Magic City Classic in terms of attendance.
So the way we've been approaching it is, first of all, so approximately, and there's a meeting later today on this, and we've been involved in this conversation for about 5 years. But the space that's going to be developed underneath the bridges is 36 acres. We're going to leverage a big chunk of that 36 acres to create the game day experience, which is a block away from the stadium. There's going to be areas within the courtyard areas and that kind of Richard Arrington corridor and 11th Avenue. We're going to close off during the game day because you're not going to allow traffic to circulate there. Those will be tailgating and game day areas. So there has been thought given about how you create a game day experience for no matter who the user of the stadium is, and especially the Classic.
All right, so Mr. Malka, you want to speak? Is there anyone else that's with you on the design review committee?
There are several people here that one I think would like to speak a few minutes on it.
Okay, so
let me say this. Tad's right, I don't represent anybody here but me. I'm the vice chair of the design review committee. I've been that since 1990, 30-something years. I know all of you commissioners, thank you for allowing me to be here. The design review committee approved the site plan, the materials, the landscape. We were not authorized to approve the seating, which we were concerned about the seating arrangement, like the Magic City Classic, home game and home game. A.D. Ingram said, we're not going to have home games, we're going to have, what was it, home site, home field? Home field, which visitors would be limited to a corner and everybody else sit around the rest of the stadium. That wouldn't obviously work with Magic City Classic with 50-50 for a home site. We were concerned about parking. They've addressed that somewhat. We're concerned about tailgating, which this afternoon, I'm going to the Battle Auditorium and look at the ALDOT proposals for that area, the 36 acres, which tailgating areas are supposed to be put in that. That's my understanding.
So ultimately, this is a conversation still ongoing with the City of Birmingham, BJCC, and ALDOT. That space has got to be managed in the program. It looks today like the Civic Center Authority will likely be the entity that manages and programs that space.
The 36 acres?
Yes.
Okay.
With some kind of input from all of the partners that are around the space, which makes it a great opportunity to leverage that for that type of use.
And we were concerned about expansion. Where are you going to put the new seats with the VIP boxes so low to the ground? That's what our concerns are, and I've got Mr.
You want to come around and join my crew?
For a few minutes.
And who are you with?
Myself, I'm just a citizen.
Okay.
I'm living in Jefferson County. I'm here with, basically, I've just got some questions that we've seen in the community that I'd like to have answered.
Well, before you say that, let me say, as representatives of the Design Review Board and the BJCC, we do have presentations. We don't have any provisions in our county commission to allow private citizens to come up. And that's a precedent that I'm not willing to make. So if you can give that to Mr. Moss, he'd be happy to address the committee. But as far as private citizens, the commission does not have any provision to have those addressed. And this wasn't even on the agenda today.
Well, it didn't have to be on the agenda, Mr. President, because I guess if I had not brought it to the agenda, it wasn't going to be on the agenda. And being that some of us are getting calls about it, in full transparency is the reason why I wanted it to be brought before us as a body in terms of, instead of having individual conversations, okay? Because I think it is valuable to $30 million of taxpayer money, and the city has done 90. Collectively, that's $120 million. And I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard from yourself. Commissioner Ammons, are you privy to the information? So that's why I was asking, and I said this to Mr. Snyder as a courtesy to him and to Mr. Malk and some of the other people who were talking to me about this, and they've also talked to some other commissioners. Bring the information before everyone so that we're not having a siloed conversation that should be had with everyone. And so if you can go over, Mr. Malk, again, what your issues are. If you are familiar with the information that the gentleman, which my understanding you with UAB on some level, don't represent UAB, but you are a part of UAB, you can just go there, because when I heard about the press box, what was brought to my attention was that we're talking about the seats that would be over in the 30-yard line, which my concern has always been from day one, how do you pay for a stadium and you're building it to surround 6 games, and as a promoter, most promoters are not interested into open air stadiums anymore. The more progressive look would always be to go with a covered stadium because of the weather. And so that was the reason why, that was the concern for me. The reason why I even called you, Mr. Snyder, is I'm trying to figure out, are these seats this low to what would be perceived into where the customers or the citizens would sit or access? Will the press box be this low based on what I'm showing you?
Well, I'm not familiar with the picture you're showing me.
Sure.
What you have is a seating bowl with a capacity of right over 30,000.
Right.
That is slightly higher on the west side than the east side.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's seat in that lower bowl is equivalent.
Including the press box?
The press box is above that.
Okay.
There's a club area that's at the concourse level. Suite levels are above that. The press box level is above that. All that is above the seating bowl. That's that picture I showed you earlier that showed that.
But remember when I
that
asked you about that blue portion that appeared to have a lower number of seats? And I was saying, because I'm trying to envision, if the press boxes are over the lower amount of seats, then that's what lowers the press box into what is.
The press box is above the seating hole.
I get it, but get what I'm saying to you, Mr. Snyder. If one side is able to, let's just say for lack of better words, you have 30,000 people who can sit in that orange and brown area that you showed us in, correct. If you have less seating capacity on the opposite side, as we traditionally would know that press boxes would be higher, this would be higher, but it wouldn't necessarily be high like it is at Legion Field. It's going to bring it down slightly because your number of seats on that side of the stadium isn't as much, so therefore your press box would be lower than it normally would possibly be if you're talking about a Legion Field setup. Am I making sense with what I'm saying?
If I understand what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
You have to.
So if you can go to the blue portion, and then anybody else can talk if they want, like, the one that you had, that there's a blue, and then there is, it's an orange, and okay, there you
A
go.
little more.
So
here's the one.
No. Go up, sir. No. Ted, bring that on. Up. I'm gonna show you. Okay. So no. Go down now. Yeah, this one right here. All right. So this one right here. So here's what my question is. If you have more people here, less people here, then these are the press boxes, right? Is this the press box? All right. Okay, so then the press box would appear to be lower coming into this area because the majority of your people are out here, and then you have some here and some there. That's my question. Is it because this is lower? Don't move it. Does it mean, okay, that if you take this press box, is it lower than it would be traditionally because you have less amount of seats that are in this area as opposed to that area? That's my question.
All right, and when that question's answered, that presentation's over.
So.
But I mean, is that
When that question's answered, that presentation's over.
Hold on, Mr. President. But see, let me say this. But hold on, Mr. Snyder, before you go any further. Mr. President, you can't arbitrarily say you 1/5 like I am. If you had told us all this stuff and these phone calls that we're getting, Mr. President, you sit on the BJCC board. I don't have a clue about what's going on other than this is my first time seeing this presentation.
And I would suggest that these gentlemen, if she wants
I'm not talking, no.
go to her office.
No,
Give her whatever she needs, because she never asked anything.
Well, what do you mean never asked?
You asked directly.
But Mr. President,
Commissioner,
with all due respect.
This is not the place or
Okay.
the venue to air that.
Mr. President, here's what I'm saying. If you didn't bring the information, are you saying I should have asked you?
What I'm saying.
You didn't
What
have
I'm
made a
saying
report
is,
to us.
you had made the request from Mr. Snyder.
No, I should have been making it the request of you because you sit on the board.
And you did.
But you
please,
didn't.
Mr. Snyder,
How about we do this? Wait a minute, hold on, Mr. President, because what you're not gonna do is run my report. Now, I'm not gonna let you do that.
Well,
I can't
let you
one.
run the meeting.
Okay, I'm not running the meeting. It seems to me you're running it because had you had a conversation with us, you still talking about $30 million. And I'm tired of you trying to hold that over Tyson and myself. You trying to hold it over our head that because we didn't vote for this stadium over there at the city, that we don't have a right to ask what's going on with the project now. They had a flooding there over 3 weeks ago. And it was in the media. And I wanted to know why is that a reoccurring or whatever the issue may be. Now, here's, Mr. President, what you should have been doing. When you sit over there and those meetings are had, even when you talked about whatever meeting that occurred last week, you never, ever came back and said, let me give you all a full report of what's going on with this stadium. Now, that's what should have been had. So here's what we're going to do. Mr. Snyder, I thank you for coming. Mr. Mark, I thank you for coming, and the media can do with this as they choose.
Sure.
You sit on that board, and you have not informed us of anything that's going on. And in addition to that, we're getting calls. I know Commissioner Tyson is getting calls as well. And we're trying to find out what is going on with this $30 million. And you all always talk about transparency, but nobody wants to be transparent today. So with that having said, whatever happens from this is not going to be on me. And I'm not going to ask you because you should have already offered.
Commissioner Mel.
I was going to tell the gentleman he could drop that off at our offices, whatever rebuttal you may have to what was presented. But we do really, I really, we've been 2 hours and we got a whole agenda to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Tyson.
This hurts, community development and human resource service. Can you cut some lights on around here? You know I have problems with my eyes.
Cook Green, I moved 135.
She needs to tell y'all something.
Laura?
Yes, so we have the 5 contracts before you today. The first one is for lab water system, it's a maintenance contract. The second one is for the pharmacy, basically getting the pharmacy area where we compound and mix the chemo drugs up to standard, up to this new standard that's changed over the years. The third one is the regular contract we have with Brookwood Baptist to cover our patients who are hospitalized there. The fourth one is a radiologist who does our reads, and then the fifth one is a primary care provider.
Second.
Number 2,
Yes, ma'am.
is this amount right on number 2? It's not adding up.
Oh, from the
From the original budget. That's not
that is
right.
the contract amount.
The requested amount's $35,000.
That is the correct amount. I don't know about the original budget though. I'll have to go look, Commissioner
Yeah,
Tyson.
it's something wrong
We
with
need
it.
to, we'll fix, we'll get
Yes.
that.
That need to be fixed.
So I'll
The
second it with that.
35,200 is correct in the
Correction being
contract. The
made.
original budget doesn't look right, so I'll have to look at that.
Good catch.
Okay, and if you could could you send it to all the commissioners?
Well, we'll have it Thursday, right?
Yeah,
If that's
she gonna
Thursday,
fix it for
we'll-
Thursday.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a motion
Okay,
and a second.
I'm just, wait a minute, let me make sure my numbers is right, because I don't want this biting me later down the road.
Well, you
I
get
don't know.
another
I gotta make-
2,500 out of Steve then.
I know. Yep, you right. Now, you know I know how to count on how to do that. I can see dollars. Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, it's been first and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, can we have, Dr. Hamilton, could you come up and give your report?
Good morning, Commissioners. We have 5 agenda items this morning. The first one is with Centel Engineering for the Lipscomb Storm Shelter. The project is near the finishing of the design, and we're required also to have construction, inspection, and observation. And so this 26 floors for the observation during the construction period. Number 2 is the Centel Engineering for the Brighton Senior Center. Amendment number 1 is the same thing. We're getting close to final design on it, and we're required to have construction, inspection, and observation, and it's in the amount of $17,214. Number 3.
I have a question on those,
Yes, sir.
Doc.
Yes, sir.
I'm not opposed to either one, but my question is, why don't we just do this all in one contract? And like, you know you're gonna design it, and then you know you're gonna observe them and watch them build it. Why don't you just do it all at once instead of coming back with
With all the
another
future
case?
new contracts, that's the way we're gonna do it.
Oh,
And I have a question about both of them, because they went over budget.
both.
And, right?
Yes,
Both of
that's
them went
correct.
over because the money been sitting there for what, how long? Over 8 years almost. So I wanna see
Really?
if with the $1 million that was just approved out of the general fund for storm shelters, can we, put some money with them to actually balance it out to where we can go ahead on and start the process of building?
Is this
John
one of the,
Henry?
is this one of the
No,
big
no,
ones?
this is out our regular CDBG, not CDBG.
Yeah, but you can use that money on that, you just can't use the storm money nowhere else. So we can use general fund money there. Right, John Henry?
That's at the commission's,
But I'm just saying, it's
discretion.
legally we can,
Yes.
at our discretion.
But is this money already earmarked?
It's two different sets. What Dr. Hamilton's talking about is his CDBG and CDBG disaster recovery
Right.
money. And then Commissioner Tyson is talking about the $1 million that you all
I
passed
understand.
during the budget.
But is this tied to those 2011 tornadoes? This
No.
money?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So how do we go by Theo or John Henry getting some of the $1 million that was appropriated for storm shelters, which both of these qualify for, to balance it out where we can start construction? Whichever one of y'all want to answer that question.
Is this money available? This 26,000 and this 17,000?
The money that you see here is out of our regular CDBG allocation.
Okay, so the money's there?
Yes.
Right,
Okay.
but it's not enough.
Well, it ought to be enough for
For these two items.
For 26,000, I'll go watch them build it and make, report on it, my gosh.
So the money that was that money that we needed, Commissioner Knight, they went over budget. So for us to complete the storm shelters, what this design is not, that's only that portion. We were trying to build. They've been working with this money for over 8 years.
But this is for the engineer to watch them build.
Right.
So this isn't the build money. But
Right,
yeah,
but I'm
there's build
saying,
money available already.
right, what I'm saying is that it's over budget now. It's not that much money in there.
I didn't,
Yes, it is. It's over budget.
well, I hadn't had that report from Ms. Hamilton, that we're over budgeted already.
Okay, so we've already bid the Brighton Community Center project. It did come in over budget. We have not bid the Lipscomb storm shelter, but based on the construction bids that we have, more than likely, our budget will not be sufficient on the Lipscomb storm shelter.
But when they're overbid like that, don't you rebid them?
We can redesign them, or if it's just one contractor, we can
Well,
negotiate.
Yeah,
okay,
but
but
they-
yeah, we'll work with you. on
But they
that.
already, if they redesign, they already the size of a tool shed. So what you gonna make a matchbox?
Well, I don't know, I don't know enough about it, all I see is.
Well, I know enough about it. I've
But this
been
is-
out there and been
but
working
this
with it
is
the
a-
whole time I'm out here. No, we need to put more than 2 people in a storm shelter.
I understand, but it just
Well,
says to include, it doesn't say anything about something,
Well,
it just says
well,
design and watch them build.
Okay, Dr.
That's what this
Hamilton,
is.
I need for you to bring back
Yes, tell us what it
the
is.
total design cost for both of these storm shelters and see how much we need to get with the, what
What the original budget is, and then what the request would be that would make to the commission if the commission decides
And
to
tell us
allocate
what it
funds
is
over.
we're looking at here. This is just a, this is an engineering,
That's correct.
this is
just
an engineering for us to pay somebody to go watch them build something. That's what this is.
Right. But I want all of it presented, can we have it for next,
Yes, ma'am.
next 2 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, how much over budget are both of these?
Well, we haven't bid the one for Lipscomb yet, so. we-
All right. How much is Brighton over budget?
It came in at $600,000. The budget is $400,000.
So it's 200,000.
Yes.
Oh,
But
now
Brighton
that's
is-
community.
But this is a
No,
Taj
that's a
Mahal,
storm shelter. Added on
Right.
to the community
Huh?
center.
400,000.
or half a Taj Mahal.
Half, I'd say half.
So how much money do we need for Brighton?
I think, Commissioner, we do better. Let me just give you a report and
Okay.
just come back in 2 weeks.
All right.
Okay.
All right,
That's
thank
fair.
you.
Okay. Number 3 is our EDA revolving loan plan. We're required to do a 5-year plan. So this gets us from 19 through 2024. Basically, it talks about the administration of the program, type of industries, eligible loan, ineligible loans, other types of things into overseeing that loan program that we've used throughout the county. Number 4 is for Willowford Orman Construction for the award of the Hueytown Storm Shelter. And number 5 is for the city of Irondale to receive the $10,000 for operations of their senior center.
Now, the Hueytown Storm Shelter is part of the
That's part of this-
2011.
That's correct.
Is this one started?
No, we're about to award, this was about to start.
Who's gonna take care of it afterwards?
The city.
All right.
And how much is this, the total cost of Town storm shelter?
$1,104,000 so far.
Oh, okay, they get $1 million storm shelter.
But that's tied to that storm in 2011.
I understand that.
But you're right.
These other two is tied to a storm too, right? The money, where it's coming from the CDBG money, right?
But there's two allocations. You have the
Okay.
regular CDBG, which is funding those two projects, and then the CDBG DR for the 2000.
Okay, but I want my people to be safe too over in Brighton and Lisbon, just like Town.
You don't want them to have to go through what these folks.
What they done went through over there. So I want to keep mine safe too.
I'm
So-
doing 1 through 5.
All right.
Second.
It's been first and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, do we have youth detention?
Good morning, Commissioners. We have 2 items on the agenda. The first one is for our UAB Physician Health Services contract. There was a slight increase in the amount of this contract from the previous years, and that's because this year we're going to add mental health services for the residents. So we will have a physician on to come in weekly to provide mental health services and a small amount of counseling services to those residents. And then the second item on the agenda is our bid stream contract. This contract remains unchanged, and it's our data management system.
Move 1 and 2.
Okay, it's been first and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Monique, you're doing a great job. I know people probably don't tell you, but the young man that we got with workforce development, he is still working. I actually ran into him and his mom at the mall. Thank you. Okay, on the discretionary money and the resolution for a salary of 2 staff people. Okay, it's been first and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I want to get a report from the Family Resource Center that we're trying to get. And I want to remind everyone that today is National Voters Registration Day, so someone register someone to vote.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me the time.
Morning, Judge. You're welcome.
Well, yeah. But anyway, it is good to be here. I appreciate having a few moments to speak with you. I understand that time is valuable, and I will not take too much of your time. However, I did want to come and speak with you. First of all, for those of you who don't know, I am the presiding judge in family court, but as such, I'm also the chair of the board for the Jefferson County Family Resource Center. And the Jefferson County Family Resource Center was specifically organized as a 501c3 in order to house a hub or a resource center for our families and children who are in need in Jefferson County. Specifically, we began this because of the families that come into family court who are ordered to receive certain services through the court, including mental health services, counseling, drug addiction services, and things of that sort, domestic violence counseling and things of that sort. And we began to realize that the families and children were having problems getting to all those services because they're all over the county. And in order for them to be successful in family court, it is necessary for them to take advantage of all the services. So the Family Resource Center is going to be a centrally located center where they can come and receive all of those services. Many of the families are transportation challenged. They don't have their own transportation. And so we are going to, the place where we have selected, which is Stevenson School, is centrally located. It's on all the bus lines, so they can get there, receive the services they need, and be successful and move on. When families and children come to family court, they have legal issues that we have to deal with, and then there are underlying issues that really cause them to come there. And it is our philosophy that we need to wrap services around and deal with the underlying issues so that they don't continue to come back to family court over and over again. This is something that is a significant problem for our county. as we see the same families and children suffering and in need on a regular basis. This is our solution to that problem. It's going to be transformational not only to the community in which we will reside, which is that right around Eagleton School, but it's also going to be transformational in the lives of our citizens of Jefferson County. And so what we're doing, and I'm not going to go through the whole proposal. You can kind of go through some of the slides if you want to, but I'm not going to go through the whole proposal. What we're dealing with here is a historic building in Eagleton School. It's the second oldest school in our state, in our area, and it needs to be preserved. We are at a point now, it's actually owned by the city of Birmingham. The city of Birmingham has given us, or is giving us, a lease, a 50-year lease with a 25-year renewal option to be able to go in and build our center at that location. The city of Birmingham has also allocated grant funding for this particular project, $1.2 million. And I have to stop and thank Commissioner Tyson for all that she's done to promote this project. She, when she was at the city, was instrumental in getting that funding for this particular project. But anyway, that money is going to be used to remediate all of the asbestos and other hazardous items out of that building, to replace the roof and to do things that need to be done in order to put us in good stead in terms of moving in there. And then we are raising the funds in order to do the rest, to build it out to our specifications so that we can serve the children and families of Jefferson County. And so what we're doing at this point is requesting, we have already submitted a request to each of the commissioners for grant funding, community grant funding for some of the expenses that we have related to this project. And we're hopeful that the commission will recognize and understand the importance of this project, that you will support the project so that we can further help the families and children of Jefferson County. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, but don't want to take up too much of your time.
But your original ask was over 10 million of the county.
Right, and now our ask is that